Good day and welcome back to IndustryBroadcast.com's audio article number 28. Today's audio article is brought to you by Noel Lopis and is the second insightful piece written by Noel. Mr. Lopis has been working in the games industry for almost 10 years now, and before he could read, write, speak, or even walk, has been developing video games of some sort of another. And working with companies like Day One Studios and High Moon Studios, he's had the pleasure of working on such titles as Darkwatch or the Mechasalt series. To check out all of Noel's articles, as well as a few book reviews and much more, hit up his blog at www.gamesfromwithin.com. Audio article number 28, titled Prototyping for Fun and Profit, written by Noel Lopis and read aloud by Ryan Wienko on the 21st of November, 2008. Prototyping for fun and profit. So here we are, ready to start development of our first game. We have the time, the resources, and the game idea itself. But where do we start? Since both Charles and I are tech guys, we knew how we could implement our game idea without any problems and make it sing and dance at a silky smooth 60 frames per second. But would it be fun? Now that we have these brand new designer hats, finding that always elusive fun factor is a big concern. The idea of waiting for a couple of months before we could tell if our game idea was fun seems a bit too risky, so we tackled that problem first and head on by prototyping. We could start at the bottom, write some low-level input handling, some graphics rendering, a basic asset pipeline, and all the other usual suspects. The problem is that even if we try to keep things as simple as possible, it would be several weeks or even a few months before we could actually start implementing the game itself. And even when we do, we'll always be running up against incomplete technology and having to spend time fleshing out as we try to make a game come out of the other end. Instead, we decided to start with a prototype. This isn't supposed to be a prototype that eventually morphs into a shipping game, or a prototype that uses the same technology as the production code, or even a prototype that's used to impress the bigwigs to squeeze some money out of them. No, all that stuff detracts from the ultimate goal of our prototype. Our approach was very similar to Chris Hecker and Chaim Gingold described in their GDC presentation. We need to answer one very specific question. Is our game idea fun? We wanted the answer as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible. Everything else seemed quite secondary. The prototyping period. And so we dove into a prototyping frenzy. For our first day, we set up shop at the E Street Cafe. We opened up the place, took over a table, hooked up our gamepads to our laptops, and hacked away furiously until late in the evening, fueled all the while by cappuccinos, gourmet tea, and pastries. By the end of the day, we had the basics of the game implemented, and even some of the more advanced features. Heck, we even thought it was kind of fun. But that's because we were tired, and we had been staring at Charles's horrible programming art all day long. In all honesty, it really was pretty sucky, and even if the enemy characters were wearing party hats. But hey, it was just the end of day one. Over the next few days, we had to take a break to deal with all the paperwork and logistics involved with setting up a new company and the office. But we resumed prototyping as soon as possible. The plan was to keep hammering away at the prototype until we saw that it was clearly fun, or we just decided it was hopeless and had better think of something new, or go back and beg for our jobs. Charles took it even further and swore not to shave his beard until the prototype was fun, much to his fiancée's delight. Seriously, the only thing the ladies think is hotter than a game programmer is a bearded game programmer. A week later, things weren't looking too hot. The game hadn't gone much beyond what we had done the first day. Sure, we had a bunch of advanced features in, but it really didn't make it more fun. Were we on the wrong path? The major breakthroughs happened in the last few days. First of all, we removed a key feature that had been there since the very beginning. We really thought that it was going to be key to the whole game, but it had really made the game too easy and too boring. As soon as it was removed, the feel of the game changed completely, and things started to look up. Then, as we were discussing some other advanced moves and features, the idea for a minor feature came up. Since the caffeine hadn't kicked in yet, and I didn't have the energy to work on the next big feature, I implemented our little idea in about 10 minutes. Charles saw it over my shoulder, and he started laughing and begging me to check in with the code. It was an instant hit. We ended up liking it so much that we decided to expand on it with a few features, and before the end of the day it was clear that it was going to become a main gameplay mechanic in the final product. That day we went home knowing we were nearing the end of the prototype phase. A good thing, because Charles's beard was starting to look fairly scary. One more day of tweaking the prototype, and we officially called it done. We knew we had gotten there when we tweaked a small feature, fired up the game to see how it felt, and spent 10 to 15 minutes going crazy with the controller because we were having too much fun. Another good sign when we would start playing and then yell at each other to look at the crazy things we had just accomplished. Finally, Charles was able to shave, thank God. The prototype process was supposed to be as quick and cheap as possible. None of the code written was intended to be kept or extended to go into production code. The performance wasn't an issue either. So, with that in mind, what did we use for developing our prototype? C++ and Allegro. Yes, you read it right the first time. Let me say that one more time. C++ and Allegro. With all of the other choices available of higher-end languages and extensive game development libraries and frameworks, why on earth did we make this choice? Wouldn't Python with Pygame or C# and the Game Studio Express have been better choices? The honest answer is that I don't think either one of those options would have allowed us to get the prototype done any faster for several reasons. First, small scope. The scope and size of the prototype was quite small, so there wasn't much to be gained by using a slightly higher level language or more complete libraries. Secondly, Allegro, even though it may seem like an odd choice and be behind the times, it's precisely the old school, fully procedural approach that makes Allegro so valuable. There are no frameworks, no enforced class hierarchies, heck, no classes or private members to get in the way. In Allegro, if you want to do something, you call the function and you're done. Exactly what we needed for the prototype. In retrospect, SDL might have been a better choice, since it would have allowed us to use a DirectX surface and do video capture more easily. But Allegro worked like a charm, and we have nothing but good things to say about the experience. Proficiency. Both Charles and I are quite proficient at C++, so even if another language gave a slightly faster development time, we more than made up for it by being very familiar with C++ and its libraries. For the prototyping, we allowed ourselves to use STL recklessly and with wanton disregard for memory access patterns and spurious allocations. We didn't care about the memory leaks at the end, so that helped to get things up and running a lot faster. Destructors, delete, free, cache, coherency, how do those equate to fun gameplay? It's no secret that I'm an avid advocate of good software engineering practices for game development. As with anything, good software engineering practices have some very real and very important benefits, but those benefits come with a cost. Because of this small scope of the prototype and the fact that the code wasn't going to survive more than a week or two, we decided to throw any software engineering practices that would slow us down in the least straight out the window. Forget about accessors and private scoping, skip any unit tests and bye-bye factories. You have to lose coupling and proper physical dependency management. Welcome to Hackfest. Check your engineering discipline at the door. One of the things that made the prototype very successful for us was to concentrate on a single gameplay mechanic. We didn't try to prototype the whole game, just one bit that we were most concerned about, and that was going to take 80% of the player's time and attention. That allowed us to deal with a small subset of the game and to iterate on it very quickly without being bogged down by creeping features or dealing with the larger scope. The prototype shamelessly used the worst programmer art imaginable. Charles plus MS Paint equals well, in Charles's words, totally awesome sweet. Yes, it looked horrible, but if the game was so much fun with those graphics, just imagine how it's going to blow people away whenever they add some real art and animations. Lessons learned. The most valuable lesson we learned was the value of constantly asking ourselves the question, is this fun? And what can I do now to make this more fun? That was actually very crucial. Having such a specific, even if subjective and nebulous goal allowed us to remain in the right path. Sometimes it was tempting to add feature X or Y, but then we realized that it wouldn't make the game any more fun. We quickly dropped it and moved on to something else. It's important not to over-intellectualize the idea of fun, though. Sure, most of the fun comes from the choices that player makes and what happens as a result of those choices, even if the choice is to mash the buttons. But we don't underestimate the value of fun in having cool, flashy things on the screen, or to have the character jump with a nice ramp-up curve and land with some squishiness to give it that just right feel. It was also very helpful to run the prototype by somebody else towards the end to make sure that we weren't finding it fun simply because we were delirious. Clearly, it has to be someone you can trust and who can understand what the prototype represents and not be put off by the stick figures. It was great to get confirmation from an outside source that it really was getting to be fun. We also got a bunch of feedback that made it a much tighter experience. A lot of it was pretty obvious, but we were too close to the game to be able to see it by ourselves. As with most prototypes, it's always very tempting to not throw it away and continue hammering at it until it looks like something that can be shipped. We really didn't have a choice because of the technologies we went with. Allegro is a fully CPU-based renderer, but we could feel the call of the dark side, and it really was a good thing that we didn't even try. Towards the end, the terrible hacked code we'd written was starting to slow our productivity. Code that bad builds up an engineering debt that you will have to pay off sooner or later, or else you just hit a wall. Our particular wall came in the form of extending a pre-existing player action in what seemed like a trivial way. Something like this would have literally taken about 5 minutes at the beginning of the prototype, but by the point that we were at, it would have taken closer to an hour. Hell, even going on for another week would have started to get very painful. So in a way, the prototype came with a built-in self-destruct mechanism, which is a good thing because it discourages us from continuing working on it for too long. Using existing technology is definitely the way to go. That way there is very little wasted time getting up to speed. The fact that we were able to get most of the core mechanics of the game in the first day goes to show how useful it is to hit the ground running, instead of getting bogged down in how to load bitmaps or create a window. Additionally, the procedural, non-frameworky, non-object-oriented approach of the API we chose made it much easier to bend to our will and make it work the way that we wanted it to, and not the way that somebody decided for us ahead of time. A few restrictions your prototyping API has, the easier you will be able to do all of the crazy things that come to mind during the prototyping phase. Conclusion. So there you have it. Now at least we can be confident that the game is going to be pretty fun. Sure, there are going to be a lot of aspects of the game that we haven't prototyped, but we consider those to be a lower risk, and we'll figure them out as we go along. At least the core mechanics have been proven to be fun. Now it's just a matter of writing the production code and implementing it all. That simple. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? That concludes audio article number 28, Prototyping for Fun and Profit, written by Noel Lopis. As mentioned before, we highly recommend checking out Noel's blog at www.gamesfromwithin.com. and make sure to check back with industrybroadcast.com on a regular basis, as we are updating the site frequently, doing our very best to bring the collective